The house smelled of roasted turkey and spiced pies, the kind of Thanksgiving scent that should have made my chest warm with pride. But instead, it burned me. Every corner of that dining room had been arranged by Evelyn, my son's wife, with her sharp designer taste, the polished cutlery, the expensive china, the stiff floral centerpieces. She wanted the house to look like a magazine cover, and for me to look like I didn't belong in it. I sat at the far end of the table where they'd put me like a decorative afterthought, while Daniel, my only son, laughed loudly at the head. He wore a pressed shirt and that smugness on his face that had grown worse with every year of Evelyn's influence. He lifted his glass, looked at me as if he were about to toast, and instead smirked. "Mom," he said, his voice dripping with mockery, "why don't you get up and clear these plates? Play the maid for once." Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. The table erupted in laughter. Evelyn covered her mouth, pretending to be embarrassed, but giggling all the same. My grandchildren, eyes glued to their phones, smirked without looking up. Even the neighbors they'd invited for show clapped at the cruelty like it was entertainment. I froze, my fork trembling in my hand. His words cut deeper than any knife. Play the maid. Was that what he thought of me? After every night I worked myself raw to put food on his plate as a child. After the years I stretched pennies into meals, mended his clothes, and gave up every dream so he could chase his, my own son, at his glittering table, reducing me to the help. I looked at Daniel. He leaned back in his chair, his arm slung lazily over Evelyn's, waiting for me to break, to argue, to humiliate myself further. But instead, I pushed back my chair slowly, the sound scraping against the hardwood, and stood. My hands shook, but not from weakness. I gathered the plates one by one, my back bent but my eyes sharp, carrying them to the kitchen in silence. The laughter followed me like a pack of wolves. In the kitchen, the clamor of voices was muffled by the door, and I leaned against the counter, my chest heaving. I should have cried, should have collapsed under the weight of his betrayal. But I didn't. I stacked the plates neatly, my hands steady now, and whispered to myself, "Play along, Margaret. Play along." I stayed in that kitchen longer than needed, staring at the mahogany cabinets Daniel thought he bought, at the granite counters Evelyn bragged about. My lips curved into a bitter smile. They thought this house, this table, this performance belonged to them, but they had no idea of the truth I carried quietly, tucked away in files and signatures. When I walked back into the dining room, Daniel raised his brows, smug. "Good job, Mom," he said. "Maybe we'll keep you on for dessert duty." More laughter followed, sharp and cruel. I smiled faintly, took my seat, and folded my hands. They thought they had broken me, but they hadn't seen the storm I had kept hidden all these years. Daniel told me to play the maid at his Thanksgiving table, so I played along. He had no idea whose table he was really sitting at. I stayed quiet through the rest of the meal, my fork pushing cranberry sauce around my plate, while Daniel and Evelyn basked in their own brilliance. They told stories about their vacations, their promotions, their big city friends who thought this house was so elegant. They never once asked me how I was, never once offered me a word of gratitude. Every so often, Daniel's eyes flicked toward me, smug, daring me to speak. I didn't. I kept my lips sealed, nodding when needed, sipping water while everyone else filled their glasses with wine. After dessert, Evelyn stood and clapped her hands. "Time to clear again," she said, smirking at me as though I were her hired help. Daniel joined in, his voice booming. "Yes, Mom, show us those servant skills. You're a natural." The laughter this time was crueler, sharper. It burned, but I didn't let it show. I rose slowly, collected the plates one by one, and carried them to the kitchen without a word. Every step I took steadied me. Every insult sharpened the resolve building inside me. When I returned, Daniel was leaning back in his chair. Evelyn nestled into his shoulder, the neighbors watching with polite discomfort. He raised his glass and said, "We should all thank Mom for finally finding her purpose tonight. Who knew she'd make such a good maid?" Something in the room shifted then. It wasn't just me who felt it. The neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. My grandchildren shifted uncomfortably, one even lowering her phone for the first time all night. They saw it too. The cruelty, the arrogance dripping off every word Daniel spoke. But I said nothing. Not yet. I folded my napkin, set it on the table, and smiled faintly. "Anything else you'd like me to do?" I asked softly, my voice steady, calm. Daniel laughed. "We'll let you know, Mom. Don't get too comfortable." Later, when everyone was gone and the house fell into silence, I lingered in the dining room. The candles had burned low, wax spilling onto the polished table. The empty wine glasses stood in messy clusters, crumbs scattered across the fine linen. I ran my hand over the wood of the table, the same table Charles and I had picked out together 40 years ago when this house was still ours. Daniel didn't know then, and he still didn't know now, that nothing had changed. This house, this land, this table, it all remained mine. Charles had planned it that way, protecting me from the arrogance he'd seen sprouting in Daniel even as a young man. The deeds, the accounts, the paperwork, all of it locked safely away under my name alone. Daniel thought he was the king of Thanksgiving, but he was nothing more than a guest at my table. I went upstairs to the guest room Evelyn had begrudgingly prepared for me, its sterile decor trying to match the rest of her glossy magazine house. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled the worn leather folder from my suitcase, and laid it in my lap. My fingers traced the embossed initials of Charles's name, my heart steady now. The folder held every truth Daniel had ignored, every safeguard he had dismissed. He told me to play the maid tonight, so I played. But the next time this family gathered at this table, Daniel would learn the truth of who really owned it, and who had been serving who all along. The next morning, the house smelled of leftover turkey and stale wine. I woke early, long before Evelyn and Daniel stirred, and made myself a cup of black coffee. The leather folder lay on the nightstand where I had left it, its edges worn, its contents heavy with truth. I carried it down to the dining room, the same dining room where, just hours earlier, my own son had laughed at me, reduced me to a servant at my own table. The table was still a mess. Wine stains bled into the linen, crumbs scattered across the wood, forks resting at odd angles. I pulled back the cloth and placed my hand flat on the polished oak. I could almost see Charles's hand there too, his steady palm beside mine. He had picked this table with me when we were younger, insisting, "This is where family will gather, Margaret. No matter what, this table will outlast the noise." He was right. It had outlasted him, and now it was going to outlast Daniel's arrogance. By the time Daniel stumbled downstairs, rubbing his eyes and yawning, I was seated at the head of the table, the folder open before me. He blinked at me in confusion. "Mom, what are you doing? Breakfast isn't even ready. You shouldn't be up this early." His voice was rough, impatient, as though I had disrupted his comfort. Evelyn followed, draped in her silk robe, frowning at the sight of me in her chair, the chair she had claimed for herself since the day she moved in. I didn't stand. I simply gestured to the folder. "Sit down, both of you." My tone wasn't a request. It was a command, sharp enough to make them pause. Daniel smirked, trying to brush it off. "What's this about? Did you find another set of plates to clear?" Evelyn giggled, but the sound died quickly when she saw my face. I slid the first document across the table, the deed to the house. Daniel picked it up, his brow furrowing as he scanned the signatures. "What is this supposed to mean?" "It means," I said evenly, "that this house doesn't belong to you. It never has. Your father made sure of that. Everything here, this house, this land, even the accounts you've been so eager to flash, it all belongs to me." Evelyn snorted. "That's ridiculous. Everyone knows this house is ours." I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. "Everyone may think it's yours, because I let you parade it around like a trophy. But legally, every piece of it is mine. Your father planned it that way. He knew what you were capable of, Daniel. He warned me that one day you'd try to humiliate me in my own home." Daniel's face darkened. "You're bluffing." I pushed the folder closer, revealing the bank statements, the signed legal filings, the trust accounts with my name alone etched across the top. Read it if you can, or call the lawyer, he'll confirm it. As of last night, everything has been finalized. I let you play host, Daniel. I let you sit at my table and order me around like a maid. But this, I tapped the wood with my knuckles. This is my table. And yesterday, you were nothing more than a guest. The room went still. Even Evelyn's smirk faltered, her eyes darting across the papers like a gambler watching the last chips slide away. Daniel's jaw tightened, his fist clenching around the deed. So what, Mom? You're throwing us out after everything we've done for you? My laugh was bitter. Everything you've done for me? You mean mocking me, humiliating me, stripping me of dignity in front of my grandchildren? That's what you call doing something for me? No, Daniel, what you did last night was show me the truth, that you don't see me as a mother, only as a servant. So now you'll learn what happens when the servant owns the house. Evelyn stood, her voice sharp with panic. You wouldn't dare. Where would we even go? I stood slowly, my hands braced on the table, and met Daniel's eyes. You should have thought of that before you told me to play the maid. Because from this moment on, the only role you'll be playing is tenant. And tenants pay their dues. Or they leave. Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came. His face flushed red, his pride collapsing in on itself. Evelyn turned on him, her voice rising. You said this was ours! You swore it was under your name! The sound of their argument filled the dining room, frantic and bitter, while I gathered the papers calmly back into the folder. At the doorway, I paused and looked back. One more thing, I said softly, but the words cut like glass. Last night you laughed while I cleared your plates. Today, you'll learn who really clears the table, and it won't be me. I left them sitting there, their empire crumbling around them, the weight of their own arrogance finally pressing down. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt free. My son ordered me to clear plates at Thanksgiving, saying, "Play the maid for once." I played along until he learned who truly owned the table and everything on it. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.